Thoughts, Feelings, and Emotions by Billy Edgeworth Albert Meyer.
Feelings and the resulting emotions are universally given as the product of preceding thoughts in every life form that somehow has a thinking, whereby it is completely irrelevant how this thinking takes place. Emotions are also formed from feelings, which is particularly evident in human beings, animals, and creatures because they are capable of thinking, for thinking alone makes it possible for feelings to arise from it. If human beings are left out of the explanation, who through their consciousness are capable of nurturing and cultivating logical, rational and rational thoughts, which correspond to feelings, then the next beings capable of thoughts and feelings are the animals. These are exclusively mammalian creatures, which, however, cannot cultivate conscious thoughts in the same wise as human beings, but whose world of thought is more oriented towards instincts, as is also the case with animals. Animals are all living beings, such as chickens, ducks, turtles, lizards, birds, snakes, fish, etc., that are still capable of instinctive thinking and can generate feelings from it. Beings, mainly the human being, but also animals and creatures, develop emotions from feelings, which, in addition to behavior, also control the body to certain reactions, as well as the interaction with its own kind and all other life forms of every species and kind, but also with 1,000 different things and objects as well as situations of life and existence, the whole of nature, the planet, and all ecosystems. If the human being is analyzed in terms of his thinking and the feelings that arise from it, then emotions arise from it, and from these in turn decisions arise that determine the behavior and thus also the life of the human being. Depending on the good or bad nature of the feelings that arise and the emotions that result from them, action and thus in turn life is either worth living or detrimental to life. In any case, thoughts always precede everything. They form the central component for logic, understanding, and reason, and according to them, feelings and from them, emotions and decisions as well as behavior and action arise. But thoughts and the feelings that arise from them, as well as the emotions that arise from them, are much more, namely, powerful evaluation systems that allow human beings to automatically assess many situations correctly, if their thoughts correspond to correctness, so that they can react quickly and also correctly. Feeling, that is to say, what human beings consciously experience as fear, freedom, joy, sadness, failure, and anger, is basically only the well-known tip of the iceberg of all that results from it. Exactly as in the case of a huge floating iceberg, where 9/10 of its volume is hidden in the water beneath it, also in the case of thoughts, feelings, and the emotional processes arising from them, a great deal remains hidden, incomprehensible and unnoticeable to human beings, but only because, as a rule, belief-related factors play into the whole thing in a way that is subterranean and absolutely imperceptible to them. The emotions that arise do not only concern the individual, that is to say, subjective experience, but they also include the physical reactions as a whole, which, through certain triggers, prepare the human beings for a behavior that moves them to act and work. For example, this automatically causes the human being's blood pressure and heart rate to rise when they see something that demands fear from them. But this improves the blood supply and thus also benefits the muscles because the release of hormones results in an optimal energy supply to the muscles. The concentration that is directed towards the potential threat automatically prevents all thoughts from turning to other things and instantly making the threat or open danger seem important. This in turn creates a very ideal condition for two options for action to appear immediately, namely to defend oneself against the danger in a flash, or to take flight. Every feeling creates a far-reaching emotion, which is also very comprehensive and focusing and makes the life of the human being worth living, because in truth, an emotion is a central component of the human being's innermost life. But an emotion is much more than that, because, as I said, it is a powerful evaluation system that automatically lets the human being assess many situations correctly when it is needed correctly, and thus also reacts quickly and correctly. Thoughts create a complex state of feelings, as well as a conscious subjective experience, which also triggers physical processes and behavioral impulses that then play an important role. It is typical for emotions that a wide variety of emotions appear, such as love, peacefulness, fear, anger, or dejection. It is also completely normal that physical as well as mental processes are coupled and thus influence the human being as a whole, and in extreme cases can even cast a complete spell over him or her. It is also normal that emotions arise from feelings, but whether these are then positively controlled or otherwise negatively and uncontrollably implemented is then solely the human beings acting according to their will. The feelings are therefore what the human being, as a rule, without thinking much, somehow experiences consciously unconsciously as fear, joy, love, jealousy, hate, anger, freedom or sadness, etc. The feelings that form into emotions are also normal. The feelings that form emotions inevitably make their way out in the form of visible facial expressions, the sound of the voice and behavioral tendencies, as well as gestures. Consequently, in this wise, the feelings and the resulting emotional state, which is also called state of mind, because obviously the feelings are also wrongly defined as mind, become recognizable, because the emotional emergence of the human being lives everything outwards and is perceived and witnessed by fellow human beings. We are talking here, for example, about expressive language and a behavioral component of expanding forms, and this aspect in particular is already in the term X itself, and says, in a meaningful way, that it is a movement outwards. The fact that the emotion created by feelings gives way from the inside to the outside and then manifests itself is something that human beings very often only become aware of afterwards, if this is the case at all. How exactly and precisely the individual components of the emotional processes are connected is given by the feelings, because of course the thoughts must precede them first, which are fundamentally the factors that ultimately cause everything. Consequently, without thoughts, there are no feelings, just as without feelings there can be no emotions, and from these, in turn, no impulses, actions, and behavior can arise. Certain areas of the brain are involved in everything, generating and controlling neurobiological processes, although emotions are so complex and multifaceted that they can hardly be generated in a controlled manner. In addition, not every human being reacts in the same way to certain situations, which in itself creates a wide variety of problems in being able to classify emotions into a certain scheme. It is difficult for human beings alone, as those affected by emotions, to be able to perceive them as a whole, because they are already unable to define their feelings, and they are also unable to comprehend the origin of them, namely, their thoughts that precede everything. For this reason, the human being often perceives the whole process only very diffusely. This is especially the case when the feelings go uncontrollably crazy and no clear and striking insights are possible anymore because they are no longer perceived correctly and are just diffuse. Feelings and emotions arising from them do bring variety into life, and every human being actually knows what thoughts and emotions arising from them are. But as a rule, these cannot be defined as what they actually are in terms of their values and in terms of their effects. It is also not understood that emotions do not arise and manifest themselves before feelings, but that it is exactly the other way round, namely that certain feelings are first created out of certain thoughts, and only from these do the emotions then develop. Feelings and the resulting emotions are not always good and beautiful, positive and peaceful, but also bad, negative, and even deadly. But if the human being tries to lead life without thoughts, feelings, and emotions in a strictly objective and rational way, he will never succeed, because without thoughts, without feelings and emotions, he could not live and would be as good as a dead living being. The human being would be an illusory being without compassion, and his existence would be only an illusory human being, and as empty as it would also be completely meaningless. Practically everything that makes him unique as a person would also be lost, as in the fact that his personal life story would also be null and void. The person's own emotionality, based on feelings, is a decisive and special part of the human personality, because the strong feelings and the resulting emotions have not only shaped the actions and activities of the human being in question in the past, but they also have an effect as special episodes at present and in the future, and constantly shape and change the inner identity of the human being. This is, so to speak, a personal experience that shows that the human being really does change in the course of his or her life, which may be for the good or the bad, depending on how the human being aligns himself or herself. Depending on this and on the events that occur, they are stored only faintly or particularly deeply in the memory. Emotions often enjoy a very bad reputation, especially when and by human beings who lead a negative life and consequently have unpleasant and otherwise bad thoughts. If, on the other hand, they had sensible and good thoughts, cultivated them, and were able to weigh them up in the same way, and did not make decisions irrationally and unpredictably, then they would be good and sensible people. It is undeniable that, for example, quarreling often leads to no solution of problems, just as learned things are not brought to bear. On the other hand, however, emotions, if they can develop in a correct wise, bring about a valuable evolution in the course of time, which develops in a high-quality way. This is essential for human beings to be able to make correct decisions at all, and to react to their environment in an appropriately wise manner. Correctly and thus reasonably considered, thoughts, feelings, and the resulting emotions are never a luxury, but are a complex system of aids in the life of human beings and their existence. The evolution of the human being has produced values that are essential for survival through his thoughts, feelings, and the resulting emotions, such as a mentally lightning-fast and generally comprehensive evaluation system, as a result of which everything can be grasped and evaluated that falls within the range of the grasping capacity of the human being, as of all living beings in general. This system is genetically given and, with its further development, is therefore also hereditary in this wise, as it also ensures that these feelings arising from the thoughts, and these in turn produce the emotions, which then control the actions and behavior of the human beings, and indeed, depending on the nature of the same, pleasant or unpleasant. If something seems disgusting, ugly, or simply repulsive, then the already repulsive feelings will lead to the likewise repulsive emotions. If, however, the feelings of freedom, happiness, joy, love, and peace motivate the human being, then the emotions form accordingly and show the human being that it is worthwhile to use one's energy, strength, and time to nurture and cultivate good and positive thoughts in order to thereby also create good and positive feelings, from which in turn good and positive emotions form. Human beings, however, who already have bad and negative thoughts and create corresponding feelings and emotions of the same kind, should not be surprised if their lives and existence take a bad turn or even sink into depression. If bad and believing thoughts also create corresponding feelings, then the cerebral cortex is also damaged, that is to say, important parts of the cortex, namely because the processing of emotions is carried out badly. Bad, dependent, and especially faith-based thoughts give rise to just such feelings, which in turn give rise to similar emotions. However, these are a powerful system for evaluating situations and initiating actions and behavior. And they are always very quick in their action, so that the emotional reaction often takes place before the human being is even aware of the matter and situation. This is to say nothing of even thinking about it. This is because the emotional circuits in the limbic system are able to prepare an initial assessment and evaluation of what is coming, even before the comparatively slow-working higher cortex areas in the feelings arise, which spread and evolve into the emotions that form from them. The feelings are very important and promote the human being's emotions from them, whereby the processes prove to be somewhat different from correctness than science claims, and they also show what moves and guides the human beings in life. Unfortunately, it often happens that it is particularly difficult and troublesome when the world of thoughts is full of negativity, and consequently, negative thoughts create bad and even evil feelings, such as fear and hatred, as well as enmity, anger, forlornness, annoyance or shame, etc., and thus factors that are not or only very difficult to control, but often not at all. This is especially the case when the human being is treated unfairly or feels this way, but also when something is embarrassing to him, such as a reprimand and the like, or a stupid answer, accusation, allegation, and so on. Very often, human beings do not know how to react to such stupid statements or stupid accusations, etc., so they become embarrassed, ashamed, or angry. Thoughts, the feelings that arise from them, as well as the emotions that inevitably arise from them again, are very important instruments for communication, and emotions in particular have a central function for social interaction. A large part of human communication takes place, even if, often only unconsciously, through the transmission of emotions with regard to the expressive component. That is to say, through facial expressions and gestures, that is to say, body language and tone of voice. In this way, the human being can adjust to his or her counterpart before the latter is able to express his or her concerns in words. On the other hand, even in large gatherings of people, people are able to perceive at lightning speed where important things are happening and whether it is worthwhile to participate or to keep away because danger may be imminent. How much verbal communication is important, however, that this social communicative component functions at all, can be perceived, for example, in those human beings who suffer from autism, because these are beings who are afflicted with a rare developmental disorder that acts like a kind of illiteracy and are dependent on help with regard to the recognition of non-verbal emotion mediations and behavior. This is because these human beings can only understand other human beings through their emotional expression of them. Consequently, they tend to live a life strongly withdrawn from the environment. This is, however, only one of many emotional disorders that occur in human beings and fundamentally affect their private, social, and professional lives. The human capacity for thought and self-overestimation and self-exaltation influence all actions and behavior and, in general, all cognitive processes of the majority of the Earth's population. This also affects all bodily functions, mainly heart rate, blood pressure, and sweating, which are controlled by the vegetative, that is to say, autonomic nervous system and hormones. Finally, through thoughts, their feelings and the emotions that arise from them, facial expressions, gestures, as well as the sound of the voice, but also the actions and behavior of human beings, whereby the emotions inevitably find a way out, especially through speech, action, and behavior, and make themselves audible through the voice and visible as a result of facial expressions and manifesting through action and behavior.